The public is being conditioned to watch the skies. The narrative is dominated by kinetic threats, the drone swarm seen in Ukraine, the hypersonic missile anxiety. This is a deliberate, systemic misdirection. While legacy systems focus on physical interceptors, pouring capital into programs like the Missile Defense Agency's $151 billion SHIELD contract, the real vector operates at a near-zero kinetic cost. The entire framework is designed to bankrupt a symmetric power by forcing it to defend against the wrong threat. The primary vector is not impact, it is silence. The true targets are the undersea fiber optic cables that serve as the planet's central nervous system for finance and logistics, and the orbital satellites that govern navigation and communication. This is information warfare, a blueprint confirmed by reports from entities like CSIS detailing Chinese strategies to inject narratives like "Why die for Taiwan?" into allied populations during a crisis. The strategic objective is to create a blind Leviathan, a nation-state with unparalleled military power, suddenly deprived of the data streams that allow for coordinated response. A blinded system cannot compute proportional response. It can only execute its final protocol. When you sever its senses, its only remaining sense is the trigger. The motive for escalation is never strength. It is a systemic function of weakness. Modern warfare is not a kinetic contest. It is a solvency crisis. The first state to face strategic bankruptcy, financially or politically, is the one that loses. The battlefield is a balance sheet, and every operation is a transaction. Examine the Russian Federation. Analysts at CSIS confirm the Ukraine campaign has become a terminal domestic liability. Public exhaustion and the immense economic drain create a political solvency crisis for the Kremlin. An unpopular war is a non-performing asset that must either be liquidated or refinanced through a different strategic vector. This weakness forces a pivot. A conventionally superior power cannot sustain a war of attrition against low-cost asymmetric threats. As Eurasia Review documents, Ukraine's systematized drone war imposes disproportionate costs on Russian legacy systems. It is a mathematical certainty. When the kinetic cost to intercept a threat exceeds the threat's own value by orders of magnitude, you are being economically dismantled. The response is therefore not tactical, it is procedural. Faced with inevitable strategic insolvency, the state is forced to abandon the losing economic model. It must escalate to an asymmetric asset where the cost-benefit analysis is inverted, the nuclear option. The motive is not conquest, it is to prevent liquidation. The core of the equation is a systemic solvency crisis. According to security analysts at RUSI, the kinetic cost exchange is now terminally inverted. A $5 million main battle tank is being neutralized by a $500 first-person view drone. This is not a balanced fight, it is an economic assassination. This phenomenon is the democratization of violence. As documented in Ukraine's systematized drone war, consumer technology now grants the kinetic leverage once monopolized by nation-states. The legacy power's response, exorbitant spending on programs like the $151 billion SHIELD vehicle, becomes a vector for self-sabotage. Each dollar spent defending a high-value asset against a low-cost threat accelerates the defender's own financial collapse. The cost to defend becomes a greater liability than the asset itself, triggering a strategic default. The gray zone is not a location on a map. It is a strategic condition. It is a global network of proxy laboratories where the protocols for 21st century warfare are being perfected before deployment against primary state actors. These are the staging grounds for systemic collapse. The primary kinetic laboratory is Ukraine. Analysts at Eurasia Review document how improvised drone warfare has evolved into a systematized combat doctrine. This isn't just about tactical gains. It is a live-fire economic stress test, proving that low-cost, mass-produced asymmetric vectors can inflict strategically significant costs on legacy military hardware. Simultaneously, a cognitive laboratory is active in the Indo-Pacific. Reports from Focus Taiwan confirm Chinese operational plans to saturate Japan with "Why die for Taiwan?" information campaigns during a crisis. This vector costs functionally nothing, yet it targets the core of an alliance: political will. It is the non-kinetic equivalent of a drone swarm, designed to achieve strategic paralysis without a shot fired. These gray zone operations create a mathematical solvency crisis for conventionally superior powers. The West responds to cheap drones and information warfare with programs like the Missile Defense Agency's $151 billion SHIELD contract. This is not a sustainable equation. It is a terminal liability. Every dollar spent on exorbitant defenses against low-cost threats is a transfer of economic vitality from the defender to the attacker. Analysts at strategic think tanks like CSIS and RUSI now observe these perfected tactics proliferating. Regional instability, from political fracturing in South Africa to domestic protests in Canada, are no longer viewed as isolated events. They are identified as potential staging grounds, proxy laboratories to test the internal resilience of Western states and pre-position assets for future disruption. This is the endgame blueprint. As the death by 1,000 cuts makes symmetric defense economically impossible, a condition accelerated by systemic financial fragility warned of by figures like Jamie Dimon, the response protocol changes. The conventionally superior power, facing strategic insolvency, is forced to escalate to its final asymmetric asset to reset the board. The gray zone is where they learn exactly how much pressure to apply before a launch-on-warning posture becomes a logical, procedural necessity. The launch-on-warning doctrine is not a policy of choice. It is a systemic protocol hardwired into nuclear command. It dictates that a nation must launch its retaliatory strike upon detecting an inbound enemy launch before the incoming warheads arrive. The objective is to prevent one's own arsenal from being destroyed in its silos, ensuring a second strike capability. This is a purely mechanical process triggered by data from a global network of satellites and radar. Now introduce the asymmetric vector. The primary threat is no longer a rival missile launch. It is a targeted cyber attack designed to induce what strategists at CSIS call the fog of digital war. This vector's purpose is not kinetic destruction, but informational paralysis. It blinds the very sensors, the space-based infrared systems, and ground-based phased array radars that feed the launch-on-warning protocol. This creates a terminal dilemma for the command authority. The screens are black. Is this a system malfunction, or is the lack of a signal the signal itself? Is this digital silence masking a volley of hypersonic weapons that the exorbitant 151B SHIELD program was meant to stop? The commander has minutes to decide. To wait for confirmation is to risk the decapitation of the state. To launch is to initiate global thermonuclear war based on a data vacuum. This is the endpoint of asymmetric escalation. The kinetic cost to disable a multi-billion-dollar defense network with a cyber weapon is near zero. The attacker forces the defender into a solvency crisis. The commander is forced to launch not on warning, but on ambiguity. The fear of the conventional system's failure, a system rendered economically obsolete by low-cost threats like Ukrainian drones, makes the nuclear option a logical, procedural escape from an unwinnable tactical position. The next phase is not kinetic. It is a test of solvency. The systemic lesson from Ukraine's drone war is that low-cost asymmetric vectors can inflict terminal economic damage on legacy systems. This is not a theory. It is a combat-proven protocol. The objective is not to defeat a military, but to bankrupt it. Adversaries now view the 151B spent on programs like SHIELD not as a deterrent, but as a liability, a fixed cost to be exploited. CSIS reports confirm the strategic shift from symmetric confrontation to systemic degradation. The question is no longer if our defenses will hold, but how many low-cost attacks are required to make their maintenance fiscally impossible. Therefore, expect a calibration shot within 12 months. It will not be a missile. It will be an attribution impossible event designed to measure our economic pain threshold and political response time. The blueprint for this is China's documented information warfare doctrine, achieving strategic effects without a kinetic trigger. The target will be a node of maximum economic leverage, a 48-hour blackout of the primary data center cluster in Northern Virginia. It will not be claimed. It will be blamed on a cascading grid failure. The true purpose is to collect data, the precise multi-trillion-dollar cost of the outage, the speed of our recovery protocols, and the paralysis of our decision-making cycle. This is a non-kinetic probe to calculate the exact pressure required for systemic collapse,